Good evening. I have 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Greg David,
Present.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Here.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Here.
and Mr. John Welch.
Present.
And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. I think the agenda says that Dr. Lindstedt was going to be here, but I do not see him. So let's bow our heads in a moment of silent prayer, if you would, please. Amen. So please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the American flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is determine agenda additions. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, we do have item, what do we got? Item E to add to the agenda, and then
Yes,
another executive session.
yes. Yeah, I think those are in the latest version of the packet.
Okay.
But that was updated this afternoon, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Just want to make everybody aware.
thank you. Very good. So the next item is the consent agenda. It only contains the minutes of the January 3rd, 2023 council meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7 is discussion and approval of appropriation ordinance. So this report covers the year end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023 expenses. The annual renewals, dues, subscriptions are included, and engineering fees totaling $69,084. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David,
a motion to approve appropriations ordinance AP 23-01.
I'll second.
motion by Mr. David, a second by Mr. Smith. We'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries same 5-0. This evening, we have Mr. Pat Herman with Garver Engineering to give us an update on Woodlawn project. Mr. Herman. On and get it close to you as you can.
If only I were a little bit shorter.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
We need to get an extender on that.
Here we go. So appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff. As you said, I'm going to go through the Woodlawn project update, kind of drill in a little bit on the Phase 2E change here. But first off, let's see. Here we go. Better this time. Oh. First off, with a safety statement, slips, trips, and falls are a huge contributor to workplace accidents. So in cold temperatures like this, winter work hazards here, proper foot attire is important. We want to make sure we're aware of our surroundings, consider different avenues of access and egress away from point A to point B. Traffic, we want to make sure we keep a proper distance between vehicles or vehicles and other vehicles around us. Make sure that our tires have tread, just like proper foot attire here. And make sure that the tires are inflated properly, and ensure the batteries are actually working properly, because we don't want to be stranded in a cold weather situation. PPE on bitter cold days, we want to make sure that we're covering our bare skin and wearing appropriate layers for the weather conditions. So Bel Aire website, social media, and public involvement tools that we use regularly, great tools. It allows us to have access to the residents and business owners around the construction area, and they're voice their concerns, and we can get back to them in a relatively quick time frame. So it's a incredible tool that we use here. So working day progress, currently we're at 220 charged working days on the project, which comes to 61%. We've charged 13 working days since our last meeting. And right now we're at 333 the contracted 333 working days plus 40 cleanup days. So current activities on the main line is paving first and second lifts of asphalt south of the railroad tracks. Also the entrances for the businesses south of the railroad tracks, and then completing the pavement along the 45th and Woodlawn intersection for phase 2D, and prepping for phase 2E. So just a couple pictures here. We've got on the left is concrete paving operations. You can see we have a nuclear density gauge. One of our inspectors out there testing density of concrete while it's fresh, and they're finishing there. On the right is the asphalt laydown machine and those operations there. Just real briefly on the left is they're going down to subgrade elevation with the blade. On the right is reinforced concrete entrance into the Expert Auto there. So, and a couple more here. Over on the right is the base layer for the pavement section, and on the left they're hogging out looks like a bunch of dirt to get down to subgrade elevation here. So currently we're in phase 2. Specifically, we're in phase 2D right now. The project is ready for phase 2E, but phase 2E is on pause for the 53rd Street closure. And once that opens back up, phase 2E will commence. Okay. So here's phase 2D. I'm sure you're all familiar with the traffic flow, but once again, north and southbound traffic, north of the intersection of 45th Street and Woodlawn, westbound traffic on 45th Street passing through Woodlawn, and northbound traffic only between 45th and 39th Street. So here's phase 2E. Once again, proposed switch after the opening of 53rd Street here. So just some traffic flow details, and I've got another kind of a diagram. Did everybody get their print off there? That might be able to help you kind of follow along with me. Northbound traffic only from the railroad tracks through 45th Street intersection. East side of the work area, vehicles approaching the intersection can turn can turn north or enter the Dollar General parking. So the northbound approaching the intersection, they'll be able to access the Los Cuñados parking lot, the Dollar General parking lot. As they approach, they will also be able to turn east on 45th Street or continue north through the intersection. They will not be able to turn left and go west through on 45th Street there. On the west side, obviously not going to be able to pass through the intersection. And you can see the highlighted area. That's kind of the footprint of where we're going to be working. But the residents on the north side of 45th Street in that area, they will be able to access their property. And then access will also be available to the Los Cuñados on the west side of the intersection. Now, what's going to change a little bit here is 47, the southbound traffic, as you saw before, we have southbound traffic to the intersection of 45th Street. So this is going to change a little bit. We're going to have southbound traffic stopping at 45th Street to through traffic. Okay. Northbound traffic is going to continue on.
Could you clarify that? Did you mean it's going to stop at 47th Street?
So southbound traffic will through traffic will stop. There is maybe one or two entrances, Richard. Yeah. So there'll be a staggered barricade there. It'll have a road closed, but that residence or those residents there will be able to go through that barricade, on the west side of the road and access their property. So, but the general traffic will not be able to pass that 47th Street going south.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is
Both,
there going to be a barricade at 53rd as well?
no, there won't be a barricade. No,
There will be.
there'll be, yeah.
Winged
it'll be-
out. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be,
Because,
but it's not barricading traffic.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
well, Sunday morning I had questions from citizens who saw the sign and said,
Yeah.
how are we going to get down to church? And
Yeah.
I said, I thought it was a mistake at first, but then as they went on, I figured out that it wasn't a mistake. It was,
Yeah,
the-
and
the plan,
I
so,
think the
okay.
message board was a little bit misleading, and Richard and I got a hold of that pretty quick, and
Okay.
got a hold of Road Safe, so got that stopped. So,
okay. Thank you.
but just one more thing, it's important to know that both of the businesses at that intersection, the Los Cuñados and the Dollar General, will have access from both Woodlawn and 45th Street through Phase 2E.
Very
So
good. Is that entrance there at Los Canados going to be different than what it is from Woodlawn? Is it going to be moved from where the existing entrance?
it's going to be shifted. Yeah.
It's look like. And I just want to make sure that was what really was happening. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Is that permanent or just for the construction?
Just for construction. Yep. And, I attempted to make, some arrows here, and I was looking at it this evening, and hopefully this doesn't make it more confusing, but, so basically we've got arrows showing that we can access the Dollar General from both different areas, Los Cuñados, from both areas, and then kind of the traffic flow east of the intersection and how that's going to work there. So this is a bigger view of what you have printed off for you here. And this is kind of a higher elevated view. So north is on the right side of the screen there, and it has a match point. So it comes back down and continues on. So, the top street section there is south, and the bottom is north, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so what this is actually just what I wanted to show you here is that Parrington, Quail Ridge, and the fire station access points will be shut down through phase 2E. Okay. What we will have access is Danbury, which is right next to the fire station, and then 44th Street as well. Up on the top right-hand corner, it shows the fire station and showing that access that they can get. They can use that side street there is going to be open through phase 2E as well.
Can we put some extra signage or slower speed limits, especially on 44th, because that's a short residential, and I can see a lot of people trying to look through there. We could talk to Pearson about that. It hasn't come up in our discussions yet, though, so I can relay that. And were you maybe thinking like 15 miles an hour or something? Something like that, because we sure don't want them going through a 40, which is what they're going to try to do, because it just got off 45.
Yeah. I'm sure the police department is going to be watching the area pretty close as well, too. So
It's going to be a lot more traffic, so we need to do something because we're safe through there.
yes, sir.
It's a residential neighborhood.
Understood. Yes,
Just-
sir.
Just to clarify, though, that is not a part of any official detour of any kind for Woodlawn.
No.
Okay.
No.
Didn't think it was, but just to clarify for anybody that's listening, that's really not supposed to be used for that purpose.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
But you know it will.
Oh, I know, but we've got to also say that. So
Right,
you're not supposed to be using that for a cut through, and you also shouldn't use the parking lot of Los Canados to do that either. So
No, you shouldn't.
just pointing that out.
Oh, never mind. Excuse me. I think the Dollar General, I was going to say, I didn't think there'd be much value there. But yes, I can see people going through Los Canados for the same reason.
And just to pop in briefly in the middle of Pat's presentation, we are working closely with Chief Atterbury and his department. Some changes may occur to this plan. Throughout the discussion, we may decide to close 44th Street. Just for access purposes, it's going to make it much easier for Pearson working through that area. And they do have access directly to 45th Street from so closing 44th at Woodlawn. It's something that we're looking at. Be aware of that. As far as folks cutting through Los Canados, that's something that we have been very conscientious of. We're trying our hardest to keep as much access to them as possible to help them stay in business. So it's easy to get to. If we do find, and I kind of suspect that folks are cutting through, we're going to have to work with Los Canados owners as well as the police department. What can we do to continue access to their business while preventing folks from cutting through? Because it is a very tight parking lot.
And I'll add to that, if I could go back a slide, let me go back to this one. So you see the east entrance into Los Canados. It's set at a skew. So if you can imagine, if you were actually exiting Los Canados out of the east access and trying to go northbound, you're probably not going to make it. That wasn't actually done by design. This was done in order to make access for Los Canados. But it is important to note that could be a hitch point there.
I appreciate you pointing that out because I noticed that skew there, but on this one, it shows two-way access from Woodlawn.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we get it. It's just one
There
of those
was,
drafting things.
yeah, there was a flurry to get this thing.
Yeah.
So just real briefly here, once again, we're ready for phase 2E, waiting on 53rd Street. During that waiting period, because Phase 2E is part of the critical path for this project, the state has looked at this and they've understood that this qualifies for what's called a state's delay. And what that entails is you may still see some progress on the project, some things being done, entries, entryways done into Sonic, some sidewalk work being done. But during that time frame, we will not be counting working days during that time frame. So, and that's how the state delay comes in. So.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to work with us on this because we really had a problem we needed to fix.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I understand 100%. So the 53rd Street closure kind of took a lot of us by surprise there.
Yeah.
And once it came up, I think we all found out last Friday, a lot of us did, and we all started brainstorming. So here's where we're at. So but it's actually worked out really good. It's given us a chance to take another look at things and continue on. So.
All right. Thank you.
How long are we expecting to eat the last?
It'll be about 2 months is what the current schedule shows. We all are aware here that we're in wintertime and working days are sometimes hard to come by. We've been pretty lucky here. So their current schedule shows it to be in the 8-week time frame, 6 to 8 week, I believe. So hope Mother Nature helps us out. Also, keep in mind that we stopped counting days, so everything is literally being pushed back. So.
So one question I had, per your project schedule, where are you? At one time, we were 18 days behind on the project schedule. Where are we today?
So I'm glad you asked that. So we had Phase 2E switch being done. I say the contractor showed it on their schedule as the 13th of January.
Okay.
And they were ready to go as of today. Right. So maybe a little bit behind, but not by a whole
Maybe
lot
about
on
6
their
days?
On their current schedule. So right. We have asked them to, because this project is being pushed back, waiting on 53rd Street, we have asked them to get another schedule out to us, because at that point we're going to be a week or two, whatever, behind. So.
Hopefully it's a week or less, but I know a crystal ball, right?
Yeah. And one other thing is, so I'm going to be talking to the inspector for the 53rd Street and East Construction as well, try to get updates on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And just to try to facilitate this process between 53rd Street and the contractor needs to get out their flyers to the residents in the area. So the quicker we can make that happen between that transition, the better. But I wouldn't expect it to happen the next day. Okay. So there's going to be a little bit of prep work done, in Mother Nature as well is something to keep in mind there. So,
okay.
One question I had was, you just mentioned the date the contractor expected to start 2E as 1/13. When does the contractor anticipate finishing on their master schedule? What was the last update you got?
Their master schedule shows it as August 25th.
Okay. So
you can imagine, and that's in a perfect scenario here.
Sure.
So pushing it back a week or two, we're talking into September now,
I just asked that because when you do the simple math of 333 days left on the contract minus the 228 that we've charged, that's 105 working days. So
Yes.
even if you add, say, 20 working days, which is an average month, you're probably only about 6 months out from completing. And that's really more like end of summer, not fall.
Right.
So I don't know how many lost days the contractor is anticipating losing during winter or spring, but it would seem that maybe they're anticipating a lot more than I would
Yes.
anticipate.
So with that being said, the contractor has requested a working day extension.
Gotcha.
That has not been finalized through KDOT in the appeal process. They've requested. Honestly, I can't remember how many days it was 60 days, 60 or 65 days.
So what's the reasoning for the extension request?
Ann, do you want to help out with this one? It's Ann and I spoke about it. Yeah, it's the railroad, the water line, the gas, and
Yeah, so there was several reasons for the delay that they had pointed out, and this request actually occurred in early to midsummer. So this request has been being reviewed for quite some time before they stopped work and before they had the very low production period in the early fall. The reasons they cited was the 37th Street water line, the delays that took. There was some materials delays on that project. There was working with Wichita. It took a lot longer for them to get the project bid and constructed and et cetera that we had anticipated originally. So that was part of the delays that they were talking about. There was a gas line conflict at the Sonic Drive-In that we kept working with the gas company. They came out numerous times, said, oh yeah, it does need to be lowered. And nothing happened. So that was some of the delays that they were citing. And then as well, they were also citing the railroad permit. So KDOT has looked at this. They have agreed to give the contractor 40 working days. The contractor does not agree with KDOT's decision. So it now goes through an arbitration process. The next step is it goes to a meeting with the district engineer. And I gave Jackie notice this morning. I said, I'd like you to be present at that meeting. That's where both sides are heard. And the district engineer says, yes, this is valid. No, this is valid. I think you are owed this number of days. And then that request can come before the city council. If the contractor still says, I really don't think that's correct, then it goes further up the KDOT chain of command. So KDOT's got a very prescribed process through there. So that's kind of where we're at. I do agree that I think they are owed some days, but I'm not going to put a number to it because I haven't looked at it very closely. But what we have had done is we have requested that Garver go through all of their diaries and put just kind of a day-to-day summary of very briefly of what the contractor was doing, how many folks were on site, who was on site with each contractor. And KDOT's been using that to help them come up with the number of days that they feel that the contractor would be due.
Okay.
I appreciate you explaining that, but one thing that's kind of frustrating is just now hearing this, that they're requested 65 days when I'm assuming we knew about this earlier. I would have liked to have known. The sooner we know, the better, right? We can communicate that out to all our constituents who've been complaining about traffic problems, the businesses that have been impacted. So the sooner we can come to a conclusion on that, I think the better, so that we can have a new normal. And it sounds like the August 31st or September timeframe is probably more logical, considering 40 to 60 days added. So I appreciate the explanation.
Yes, and the reason we didn't bring it to council earlier is because KDOT had not gone through their review process, and that took months and months. I'm not even going to say how long it took, but it did take a very long time. And it was just recently, like as of January 3rd, given to the contractor, offered to the contractor. I think it was offered a few times prior to then. And the contractor came back and said, will you please take a look at this? Well, what about this? What about this delay? And KDOT said, well, we don't usually do that, but okay. So the final decision really didn't come out until, I guess it's not final, but the offer didn't come out until January.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
does the city have any role in influencing that process, or is this completely something that is in the hands of KDOT?
It is 90% in the hands of KDOT. The city does have some influence. I have been sitting in on meetings and providing, yes, KDOT, I understand your reasoning and I agree with your reasoning. So I have had some, but the final decision, as my understanding, will come before the city council. But the city council does need to understand that KDOT has already reviewed this and per their standards. So it's not just like the city can say, no. I mean, you could, but that's going to be a very bad relationship with the contractor. It has to be that understanding of that construction process, which is why KDOT's got their prescribed. It's not just given away willy-nilly. Like contractors been through 65 days and they've come back down to 40. So yes, we do. Myself, Garver, KDOT, the entire project team does understand the concerns, but if there's legitimate reasons, that's why we look at them. And there are availability. You can't just say, I don't care, get it done. It's the contractor can say, I mean, you could, but what's that going to do to the project? You're not going to be able to move forward very easily. So I do understand we are working through it.
I'm going to say something and it may get me in trouble, but I don't understand why we need 65 days added to the schedule if we're only 5 days behind right now.
That would be because the schedule is continually being updated. So
But
when-
the things that were holding them up have been taken care of, correct? So what are we not getting done?
This 65 days that the contractor is requesting was requested in like July. And I'm not sure the exact time frame, but it was requested a long time ago. So since that time, the contractor has updated their schedule 2 or 3 times. And so that new schedule now reflects the current place that they are. Every time they update the schedule, it reflects the current
you're
point that
saying
they're at.
We should have been to 2E 60 days ago if we'd had not had those delays.
2E was intended to be, and if you look at the very original schedule that doesn't account for
Didn't
any
e-
of
there
the
wasn't
issues
even
that
a
came up,
2E.
it would have been, yeah. Well, 2E didn't exist at that time, but it would have been we probably would have had it done before the new year.
And we've had a pretty decent winter that they've been able to make up ground. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I think I am recalling that we have done one change order that already extended the working days. KDOT is aware of that and including that as the part of their analysis. Is that right?
That is correct. That initial change order, I believe, was for 13 days. And I believe that was for the sanitary sewer delays, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't want to cut off that particular discussion about the additional days, but if we're done with that, I wanted to move on to something else here, another question, different question.
Sure.
So along 45th, especially on the east side, it looks like there's some retaining walls that should be installed. What's the status of getting those retaining walls installed? Okay.
Are you talking about 45th or along Woodlawn?
No, on 45th.
On
Near
45th.
St. James. So it looks like both sides of St. James on the south side, looks like there's waiting for some retaining walls. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but that's what it looks like to me.
So that particular area has not been brought to my attention yet. It may be because the contractor just has not graded it out yet. There are some areas along Woodlawn, particularly, I looked at Danbury this morning. There are some other areas along Woodlawn at the side streets going west that do need some retaining walls. Just the height is just not able to be met, or it's too steep.
Well, that's what I think is going on
So,
there.
Yeah.
Right at St. James. and
Richard, do you
45th.
know about that area?
Once they cut the ditch, it became very steep. We haven't really addressed it.
Okay, so it may be forthcoming. That I'm not sure. But the ones along Woodlawn, we have cut those back significantly. The length of the retaining walls, where it sits currently, is MKEC has put together a design, and it's in Pearson's Court. And the last 2 project meetings, we have progress meetings. We've talked about it, and they're looking at it, working with a subcontractor to get a cost, which will then come before KDOT for approval and then City Council for approval. And if you guys choose to say no, we'll have to put in a very steep piece and homeowners will be upset.
And that'll be really fun to mow.
Yes.
I have another question about 45th Street, north of Los Cañados.
Okay.
That deteriorated really bad over the last few weeks. Are they going to rip that out and redo the base so that we get a decent base under there?
South.
It's on the south side of 45th, but
Okay.
north of Los Cañados.
Yes.
It'll be prior to the surface lift that goes on. They'll probably, I think they patched, sorry.
Yeah, they
I
threw
think
some.
they patched that in.
They did.
And just to kind of hold it together. But prior to them putting the surface lift on the pavement section, they'll go in and fix up all those areas. So,
Okay, because I know once we got a bad base, we're sunk forever.
yes,
So.
yeah, that was it wasn't the quality of the base. It wasn't the quality of the asphalt. It was very much the traffic that was going through there in a very tight corridor. And typically traveling public don't drive right on the edge of the asphalt, and just right on the edge of the asphalt is where it's at its weakest. So that's why they build out shoulders. And so, but yeah, it has been addressed as far as getting it temporarily put back together. And,
Okay.
and they'll address it in the surface lift. So.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Herman? Well, appreciate the update. Thank you very much. It's
Thank
good
you.
Information. So the next item on the agenda is citizens' concerns. Do we have any citizens here with concerns? I don't see any, but sometimes I don't always see them. Okay. Here now, I'll move on to council member reports. Mr. Dean, you have a report for us this evening.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I've one thing. Attended the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce luncheon earlier in the month. Gary gave a report on membership, said that we're up to 14 members this year, was encouraging people to renew and asking for new sponsorships for support of the chamber and the annual events. Bel Aire Recovery Center spoke a little bit about their new facility, Shepherd's Crossing as well. And kind of set some goals for the chamber in the new year. They're looking to exceed 40 members and try to increase their sponsorship above the $10,000 mark that they hit last year. So we also discussed some plans for potential visits to CCUA, the Public Works Facility, or other options that we could attend city facilities besides other businesses. So it was a pretty good luncheon and excited for the chamber in the new year. That's all I've got.
All right. Thank you. Mr. David,
No report. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend the Sedgwick County Association of Cities meeting this past Saturday along with the mayor. It was hosted by the county at their currently leased facility downtown. And it was mostly an opportunity for the commissioners to give an update on some different things going on. Commissioner Beatty, who's new to the commission, was there and provided some background and an overview of his experiences and his new role on the commission. And so it was nice to meet him and learn a little bit about him. Commissioner Howell gave an update on the county's legislative platform and talked a little bit about their approach there. We talked about that at our last workshop and came up with, I think, 5 or 7 items that we thought were priorities. The county commission has narrowed it down to 2 that they primarily focus on, and they've put it on a business card, and they're handing that to the legislators to really put focus on what they're interested in driving, with the QR code that then links to a more in-depth list of other miscellaneous things. And so I thought that was an interesting approach of highlighting a couple of really important things to them with a link to more details on other stuff if folks are interested in it. Kind of follows the same model that we were talking about really emphasizing things that were important to us. So those were a couple of the things that I thought were interesting enough that I would share. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I have no report.
Ms. Hamburg.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended Planning Commission last Thursday evening. Was really just there to see it in person instead of just reading about it in a report. Won't comment on the issue that was discussed if and when it makes it to us. But just wanted to thank those individuals for volunteering. They all commented and just thoughtful as you think about property rights and tight quarters. Just appreciate each of them volunteering their time for the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move on to the mayor's report. So if you have not heard, I was the one who asked that Mr. Henry and Ms. Stevens work on the Woodlawn project, because I saw over the weekend that looked like 53rd Street and 45th Street were both going to be closed to east-west traffic, and I thought that was not a good situation. So while this solution that they've come up with helps, it's not ideal. I get that, but I appreciate their getting in there and taking care of the situation and at least keeping some traffic flowing. We get about our traffic studies from 2018, 2019, which is old, shows about 6,200 cars go through there, those two streets every day. So that's probably more than that now. So that cutting that traffic off would be a significant impact. So I appreciate it getting done. I'm glad we have a plan going forward, and I hate the fact that we're having to delay Woodlawn a little bit, but it looks like maybe a week, maybe 10 days, hopefully no more than that, and weather holding out and such. That's good. Next item is the K96 Improvement Project. We'll have an open house on February 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. This will be at the easy for me to say, National Center of Aviation Training on Webb Road at 4004 North Webb Road. That's also known as WSU Tech. And the formal presentation will start at 6 p.m. So this project will affect Bel Aire citizens, as it will reconfigure access to K96 at Webb Road, Rock Road, and Woodlawn, and may have some improvements for Oliver as well. On January 8th, I attended the swearing-in ceremony for Sedgwick County Commissioners Meissner, Beatty, and Howell. Congratulated them on their re-election and election with Mr. Ryan Beatty. So that look forward to the new county commission. On January 11th, I attended the UAC meeting. They reviewed and improved their annual report. There was a discussion about Wichita's Stage 1 water advisory. This is a minor impact as Wichita, we are a customer of Wichita's. So Bel Aire has an even smaller impact as this advisory because we get water both from Wichita and Chisholm Creek Utility Authority. So the advisory is a suggestion to conserve water. Of course, that is something we should always look for and try to do as reasonably as possible. On January 14th, I attended the SCAC meeting along with Council President Justin Smith. The main issue in that meeting was to appoint a SCAC representative for the Sedgwick County Fire District 1 Steering Council. So Terry Nichols, the mayor of Colwich, nominated Mr. Rule from Colwich. And Mr. Rule is a firefighter for Wichita. And there was a lot of discussion about stacking the steering committee with a lot of firefighters. And the firefighter, while the firefighter perspective is important, there are now at least 2 firefighters that have been nominated to the steering committee. The steering council is to advise Sedgwick County Commission on overall business of the fire district. So that requires skills in accounting, management, et cetera. Mr. Rule sounds like he will be a great asset, as he has an MBA on top of being an active firefighter in Wichita. I also attended a luncheon today hosted by Senator Moran and welcoming SpaceX to Wichita. We heard from CEO Gwen Stockwell. She was there of SpaceX. She said that they've made about 60 launches in the last year. I didn't know that. And they are planning about 100 this year. Many of those launches are for their Starlink satellite system, which will obsolete fiber cable, especially in rural areas. SpaceX has interest in Wichita area supply base, as these suppliers are experienced in aerospace requirements. The space module launched Sunday night is the future of space flight for SpaceX plans to build many of those modules, and their future and needs to develop suppliers to make and supply components. On January 10th, I attended the WAMPO meeting. WAMPO presented a first draft of their effort for the regional sidewalks and walk paths maps. So we need citizens to help improve the accuracy of this map. Please take time to review the map, and if there are updates and corrections, please email them to Eldon Taskinen at eldontaskinen@wampo.org with updates. There is a link on the Bel Aire website for that information, so you can go on the Bel Aire website and get those updates. I already submitted one for the walk paths north of the Spiritual Life Center because I saw that there were some missing links there, so we should see that updated by the end of the week. Excuse me for a second. WAMPO has also updated the commuter data as of 2019. So Bel Aire's commuter data as of 2019, we have 106 internal commuters. We have 1,768 who come into Bel Aire from other places. And we have 3,426 who live in Bel Aire but commute to other cities. Our population is sixth in Sedgwick County, ranked sixth in Sedgwick County with a population of 8262. Our employed population is 3,532 people, and we have 1,874 jobs in Bel Aire. Percentage of population change since 2010 was 22%, and the average travel time to work is 17.2 minutes. So please continue to patronize Los Canados, the Dollar General. These two businesses continue to be impacted by woodlawn construction. I had dinner with my wife there this evening, and they really need some business. So anybody can help them out, please do. So I'll now ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first week of the legislative session has started. Governor Kelly has postponed her State of the State presentation, so that will be presented on January 24th. And it is early, but 3 items that we're watching. One is the sales tax holiday, not really as a big impact to Bel Aire, but another one is a proposed bill that would limit cities' ability to plan anywhere within the 3-mile radius of their area of influence that's surrounding any city. The league is looking at that. We have to kind of see what that bill ends up looking like. And finally, there is talk of legislation to limit cities' ability to negotiate franchise fees with streaming service providers. So maybe a special carve out for those groups. So we're watching that kind of early legislation. Not sure how it will take shape or if it will end up, making it into the actual process of becoming a bill. But that's what the talk is in Topeka right now. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. Now we'll move on to assistant manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've talked about 53rd's closing, but the main reason is the force main that they have to run underneath 53rd. We always look for safety, and that's one of the main reasons we want to be the safest possible with the workers working. So hopefully that'll open up. It's scheduled January 27th, hopefully a little sooner. As we get to the end of the year, I know you don't hear a lot about this. I publish it in our budget, but we do have performance measures, each department. So I want to share a few from our utility department. Real interesting. We've talked a lot in budget, how many new homes and permits we've had, but let's look at how many meters have we installed in the city. 2019, we did 94 meters. 2020, we did 111. 2021, we did 117. 2022, we did 350 new meters. Move in, move out. So when you put in a new meter, somebody has to come to City Hall and ask for service. We also have rental properties where people switch. We did 1,300 move in and move outs in 2022 alone. Perhaps the most interesting for me anyway, we print or we do about 41,000 bills throughout the year. From 2019 to 2022, we've increased our e-bills 45% from that time period. And we print, so physical print, the exact same amount in physical bills we did in 2019 that we do today. So what does that tell you is our citizens are becoming more electronic, and we should look at that in the future. So that's a little something that we try to keep as a staff. It's hard to keep a lot of that data, but we try to find the most important and report it back. So I thought you'd be interested in some of those numbers, and I'll continue to try to sprinkle in a few more here and there as I attend council meetings as well.
Well, you are good at the numbers. So very good. All right. Well, thank you. Move on to item 11A. So Mr. Marty Cooey, Logan Schrag, Chad Crittenden, and Sean Matheny all have asked to be on the gravel road task force. All these individuals live in Aurora Park and have attended meetings in the past. It was also asked I was also asked by 3 other Bel Aire citizens to be part of this task force, but they did not live in Aurora Park, so they do not qualify due to the restriction in the city council resolution. So I encourage those individuals who are interested to attend the task force meetings and provide their input. They are open meetings and all citizens may attend. The next meeting is this Thursday, January 19th at 6 p.m. in the community room here in City Hall. So I'm asking for council to confirm to add these 4 residents to the task force, and this will make the total number of members at 10.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg.
make a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of the 4 listed individuals to the Aurora Park Gravel Roads Task Force.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Hamburg and a second by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Item B is consider Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce funding policy for 2023. So Gary O'Neill, the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce president, attended our December 20th, 2022 council meeting and gave a year-end report. Mr. O'Neill requested $20,000 in chamber funding for 2023. In 2022, the city gave $20,000 to the chamber, and in 2023 budget contains the same amount. So the 2023 chamber funding policy has been updated to reflect this in the new year.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce funding policy for 2023 and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Welsh and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So item C, council decided to move forward on the engineering design of 45th Street from Oliver to Woodlawn. Our city engineer wrote the RFQ and sent most of the engineering firms in Wichita Metro with 3 responding. I created an interview committee consisting of city engineer Ann Stevens, council members Greg David and Tyler Dean, as well as myself. Interviews were held with Garver, PEC, and MKEC. The committee recommended Garver, and the city council accepted that recommendation on December 6th, 2022, meeting instructing at that meeting and instructing staff to negotiate a fee. Garver presented at our January 3rd, 2023 meeting and answered questions. Council tabled the action to this meeting so that funding could be discussed at the workshop last week. Funds are available to pay for either option in 2023. As I said at our last meeting, and I still believe we should approve option B, as this will give us the full picture of overall concept and then design. It will tell us whether a roundabout or signal light is the best option for the rebuild of the intersection at Oliver and 45th. The rebuild of that intersection is part of the project scope, so we need to know, are we making the best choice for this? Additionally, and we do not know today, it's pretty clear that the U.S. Department of Transportation will be offering grants for roundabouts as part of their zero traffic deaths program. Further, we having conceptual options of sidewalks to Stuckey Middle School will go a long way to get funding through Wichita and or WAMPO. So to be clear, Garver has included 13 steps in this agreement. The first step is traffic study. The traffic study will provide guidance for concepts. The second phase is concept, and that conceptual guidance with options will be reviewed with the city council before actual design work is done. It is at that point we will make a decision on what concepts to move forward to design, and those concepts can be utilized to discuss additional funding participation. However, grant applications have a better opportunity for approval if the design is complete and shovel ready. Also, the Garver team, please correct me if I have this wrong, but step 8 is construction support. It says the scope item is deleted if Garver is selected as to provide the CEI services. Since this is not a not to exceed price, is it safe to assume that this would be a reduction in the cost for services related to this agreement? So just ask Garver to help us understand that, and Mr. Ken Lee is here.
Good evening, Ken Lee with Garver, and I think the mic is perfect height, but maybe that's just me. That your question about the fee is correct, that if we were selected to do the CEI services, that fee would be deleted with the supplemental agreement to remove it from our fee base. That is
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you. So do we have any
Mr.
other
Mayor.
questions for Mr. Lee? Mr. Smith?
I was just going to say, I think I asked to table this at our last meeting, and it was because I wanted to understand how we were going to actually pay for it. Out of whether we were going to pay for it out of the, our capital projects fund, or if there's enough money there. There's a lot of demands for those funds, and we walked through that in depth at our workshop last week. And seems that we definitely have the money for this if it's our priority, and I think it should be. So I'm definitely comfortable moving forward with option B at this point.
And I'll just mention too that the fee that we have shown here, it's going to be a 2-year project. So not all of that cost will actually be encumbered on this year as well. So as far as your budget, you may budget the whole thing, but we won't use the whole fee this year regardless. It is a longer project than that. So the expense this year will be a little bit less than the total fee.
At what point will the design be shovel ready for, a project if we were to get funding?
So our initial presentation at the interview was October of 2024, so late next year, and we're probably a few weeks behind that schedule right now, but we also had a little cushion in it. So right now, depending on how we structure the traffic study, when we take those measurements, it'll be late 24 or early 25. 25 is when WAMPO is scheduled to budget it. So it'll be regardless, it'll be ready. When WAMPO funding is ready, it'll be ready. And for pursuing grants, we'll have significant plan preparation done earlier next year, because the process we'll go through is we'll be doing field check later this year. Then we'll have an office check early next year. And then the final checks and PS&E and those kind of things later next year is the plan. So it'll be late 24 sometime, and I can't give you an exact date right now, but that's where we're at. We'll refine that schedule with Ann as we go through, and staff, and give you updates as we go through that traffic study and concept phase.
Is there any chance that WAMPA would have any funding available prior to that, based on its current status as kind of selected but not funded?
What I've been told by folks at WAMPO, and maybe Ann might have some other things to add to this, but they think probably there will be, because the bipartisan infrastructure law has 2 sections to it, a grant section and a money that's just going to be rolled out to states. Okay. Their anticipation is that some of that money is being rolled out to states will give them more funds than they currently get. But nobody knows what that crystal ball is about the amount. I think they're saying that 60% of it is that. There's only 40% of it is in grants. So that's where they're thinking there'll be additional funding.
I'm concerned that the timeline on this isn't soon enough, and I'm interested in others' perspective on that.
From what I've heard on the WAMPO funding, just to add to the mayor's comments, there is more funds coming, but the funds that are coming are like 100,000 maybe.
Oh.
It's not, we're not talking the 5 to 6 million that this project is going to need, and beyond that, that the significant amount of funding is coming later. I do have a meeting with WAMPO where they're going to be coming and talking to the National Society of Engineers Club on Thursday, and they will get further information. But I don't believe that we have this quantity, the amount of funding needed for this project, until that 2025 is going to be the best bet.
Yeah.
As far as your timing goes, I don't think it would matter which engineer we chose. These projects are substantial in size enough. You can't just throw it together. So it does take a good 2 years for design. If we chose not to do a traffic study and just say, let's go with a standard 3-lane section and a signalized intersection, your most traditional, then it would be a little bit less, a few months less, but it's still going to take that time. And a large chunk of the time is going through KDOT's PS&E plan specifications and estimate project process. That takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So that's where a good chunk of your time is spent. And that's not something that we have control over.
Yeah, and along with what Ann said, she's got it exactly right. KDOT has what they call a RUPUS schedule that they have established. Once you get assigned, once you reach a certain point of the plans where you submit them for field check, there's kind of a standard process where you give them plans, you wait a certain amount of time, you get a review back, you meet, you do your field check meeting. They're standard dates that are just built in, so it's hard to accelerate the process with KDOT. I mean, it's kind of like when she was talking about evaluating the days. They have their processes very regimented. So it's frustrating at times because we may be ready to move on, but we're sitting and waiting for the process to happen. Now, there's a little bit of flexibility. I mean, if we needed to accelerate getting field check plans in, if it was one of those things where we needed to accelerate things, as we go through and talk about scheduling public meetings for the concept phase to get feedback from the public, we can kind of work with you a little bit on that as far as compressing the schedule as much as we can there if that's something we need to do. From a funding standpoint, I think you're picking the right time to have it started, though, because I think if you waited another year to do this, then you would be getting to the point of having a delay that would probably be problematic. But I think you've picked the right time to make the action.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
just as a follow-up to that, Ken, there's no other than the standard process, the KDOT process, and kind of your typical estimate for the design phase. There's nothing extraordinary. There's no problems you perceive or would anticipate on permitting. There's nothing wild. It's just, this is kind of standard for this kind of project.
Yeah, and of course, part of the KDOT process is making sure that you do have adequate time to get the permits you need and that. So, but we don't have any unusual permits on this one that we're anticipating that would slow it down. No.
And then the other thing I had to say is I wanted to thank staff, and I wanted to thank Garver for putting together the two options, because I think that was brilliant. It was a good idea to come to us with a couple options, and wanted to say that my support's behind option B. And the reason I think that is when I'm thinking about making a significant investment in anything, I like to take a very holistic master plan approach. And I truly believe that spending that extra money will give us a chance to make the best decision. So that's why I will support that option.
I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
I know at the last meeting you said that if traffic counts didn't support a roundabout, you would not design it. But if the traffic counts do support a roundabout, will you also present us a design without the roundabout so we can decide if we can afford the roundabout?
Absolutely. You're not obligated to do the roundabout regardless of the outcome of the study. What we're going to find out with the study is it feasible? Do we have, we'll do what we call a gap analysis to make sure that it can operate safely and efficiently, because you don't want constant stopping where people, because that's problematic if people feel like they're getting stopped all the time. So we look at those kind of things, but at the same time, there's no obligation to take the roundabout. The only thing you could run into as far as a situation is when we do our study, when we do the signal warrant analysis, it may be likely that it'll meet signal warrants, but there's no guarantee until we do the study. So what you may find out is there's going to be three options you may have to consider is the roundabout, because you can do a roundabout no matter what, because it doesn't rely on warrants, as long as the other traffic data supports it. If the traffic signal has significant enough traffic to warrant the signals, having a signalized intersection. Or if it doesn't, just going unsignalized. You can just have a four-way stop for a while longer, plummet, and have it ready to go when the traffic counts do raise high enough to go ahead and install the equipment. But you are not going to be obligated to pick the roundabout. If you're not comfortable with it, If we think it's the right thing to do, part of our presentation to the public would be some information on why roundabouts are safer, because they're safer in their own ways. But at the same time, if you get bombarded with the public saying we don't want this and you're not comfortable with it, there's plenty of signalized intersections. So that's a kind of a long answer to yes, you can still pick the signalized intersection regardless of the outcome of the study.
Okay, and my other question is, you've got a design that goes clear out to Stuckey Middle School. What obligation is there for the other governmental bodies, tripping over my tongue here, to commit to this plan? If we spend all that money designing it, are we going to get anything back on the design from those other government bodies? Are they going to shut the whole thing down and say, we're just not paying for it, we don't care what you think is good?
So our actual plan, as far as the full pavement replacement, will probably only go a couple 100 feet west of the intersection to wherever the natural end of the intersection pavement is. And then it'll transition out, kind of like you're seeing on what's going to happen with Woodlawn, where it'll transition out. The stuff to Stuckey is going to be more just sidewalk improvements. We will only take sidewalk improvements all the way to Stuckey. That may involve a little bit of rework to make that happen, but we're not planning on doing a full pavement replacement all the way over there. So the answer to that is we can have a conversation with Wichita about it. And I know I watched the workshop video. I saw that you had some concerns about coordinating with Wichita, and we have a great relationship with Wichita engineering staff and the government leadership in Wichita. We've worked with them a long time. We're the owner's rep for City of Wichita and a couple of their major projects. We know the decision makers there, and I'm confident that any kind of discussions we need to have on coordinating right away or those kind of things, we can get it worked out. In terms of cost sharing, if it's just the intersection, Wichita's probably going to say, no, we're all right. But as far as the sidewalk, I absolutely think that Wichita and USD 259 should participate in that cost in that respect.
Is Wichita on both sides of 45th there west of Oliver or not?
Yes.
Okay, so they will have the whole road. My real concern there, which I didn't say at the workshop, is I don't want to be spending Bel Aire citizens' money on things that benefit Wichita and USD 259 outside of Bel Aire.
Well, and that's a point that's well taken. We do want to be good stewards of the citizens' money. And if there's no support from USD 259 or Wichita to extend that sidewalk to Stuckey, I don't think it's our place to force that into the equation. We would certainly stop it short. If they're not willing to, if they're not interested in it, I think we'll talk early on. And if there's obviously no support, that'll be one of those things that we'll spend less effort on. We may kind of plan it out just to see how it would work, but we're not going to do a full design if that's not what's desired.
Okay, like I said, I just don't want to spend our money on that stuff. We've got enough things we need to spend money on without helping out Wichita.
Oh, I hear you. And I'll say that USD 259, we worked with them pretty extensively. We actually looked at a roundabout down at Pawnee and 127th for the city of Wichita. And we had buy-in. We worked with USD 259. They were in support of it. So we've worked with them in the past about these kind of projects. So we know who to talk to at USD 259.
Mr. Mayor.
Minor question came up in my mind while we're talking about roundabouts. It looks like they're putting one in at Leakers. They're at Broadway and what is that, 61st or something?
61st, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with that design plan now.
I didn't think there was that much traffic there. So I didn't know if it was because it was a low traffic area now that they could put it in. Because Broadway used to be 4 lanes, and I think they're kind of, the traffic has died off there for some reason.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, that's part of it. You don't want to put a roundabout in an area where the traffic levels are expected to be too high, where it becomes, again, if you're uncomfortable entering the intersection, if you have to stop, it's not a safe environment. You don't want to force them where they don't belong. So that's part of the looking, and that intersection, that's an appropriate level of intersection. I could see a roundabout working there.
Okay. Mr. Dean.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out that I respectfully disagree with Councilman Welch on the fact that Stuckey is used by a lot of citizens in Bel Aire, and a lot of children would like the ability to safely walk to Stuckey. So I'm in full support of studying that concept and entering in with a good heart and how we can negotiate and partner with USD 259 and the city of Wichita on getting that done. Because I think that is an important thing, just as important as it is that we get Isley's sidewalk continuous so that it is safer for kids to walk to Isley. It's the same situation in my mind, and I just wanted to make sure that my voice was heard on that.
Yeah, it's not the same situation because it's outside the city limits. Isley is inside the city limits and clearly benefits Bel Aire.
Serving
And I understand there are some students from Bel Aire that go to Stuckey, but there's a dividing line there where we should quit spending our money.
And I'll just say, like I said to start with, it'll be a conversation we have early on.
And
City
and
staff
we
will
may-
be giving, we'll be talking about it in the concept stage before any money is spent on it, as far as
We
whether or
may
not it's
easily be
appropriate.
able to get them to commit to it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what if not?
Well, and if the answer is it's not the right time to put it in, that's a discussion we can have as far as that goes. That's the good thing about the process is you do get we get a few months to kind of get everything worked out and make those kind of decisions. I agree with Mr. Dean's comment that if we can get it accomplished, it certainly provides a safer environment. I drive that road all the time. I don't see a lot of kids walking on the shoulder there, but I have seen kids walking along the shoulder of that road pretty routinely. It's not every day, but it's not that uncommon to see kids walking out there. And
Yeah,
so,
I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying I don't think Bel Aire should be paying for it.
and I agree.
That's
I
the-
mean, as a citizen of Bel Aire, I want to see people paying their fair share as well. So I agree with you that we do want to pursue that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'd like to make a motion to accept option B from Garver for engineering design at 45th Street from Oliver to Woodlawn at a cost not to exceed $739,702 and authorize the mayor to sign all related documents.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any additional discussion or questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David.
couple of questions. First of all, the numbers that we're voting on don't include the full budgeted amount that's in the packet. There's about an $80,000 difference in the packets because of the non-Garver work.
Right.
And so,
There is some non-Garver work in
so
there.
are
Yeah.
we only voting on the Garver work now? And it seems like we're committed to all of it if we approve the Garver.
I'm going to ask staff to help clarify that. I don't know the answer to that question.
We are committing to up to, but my understanding is on expenses that Garver doesn't use through their own contractors, they would not charge us for those. But I'd want to verify with Garver.
Yeah, our fee is only for our agreement is only for this amount. The other fees that are shown there are estimated fees, and we, again, like she said, some of that would be variable depending on how many hydro excavation checks we need to do on the project, or if we're doing geotechnical bores, we'll work that out as far as depending on what we're doing on the project, it may influence the number of bores. So those numbers may change slightly, but to some degree, the overall commitment is going to be closer to the higher number. Yes, that is correct.
Right. So that's my technical question is how does that get approved? If we only approve the 740 and the budget is 784.
The contracts for those additional services, the hydro excavating, et cetera, will come to you at a later date
Okay.
once we have determined the number of bores we need, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, you are going to be softly committing to that larger amount, but the final commitment will come at a later date when we present those contracts to you.
Okay. Thank you. And then I do have a question for Mr. Lee that, with the traffic, it seems like the traffic, I love roundabouts. I think they're a great idea, but it seems like in that location, the traffic is highly coming from the south to Coke and from Stuckey so it seems like it's a real long shot to get that in there.
And I'm not gonna say that I
You can't
disagree with
speculate,
you
that's
that
why you
it's
do the study. But, and then the other thing is there not some delay by getting the extra right away from Wichita with that?
That's the right-of-way acquisition part of it is actually kind of already worked into the schedule. That's already included in our assumptions on the time, and part of the KDOT process is to allow that time for right-of-way acquisition. before you go to PS&E, because they have a pretty rigid requirement as far as what you have to have accomplished before they'll go to that last 60 to 90 day step in the process. So that's included in the time. So we won't lose any extra time in terms of that. And we'll have plenty of time to have those discussions if we identify a concept that would require right away and a right away discussion with the city of Wichita as far as either them de-annexing or however we would handle it, or they would give a permit, because that's another option, would be the city could just give a permit for us to do the work in there too. Most likely it'll involve an exchange of the right of way to match whatever our final signal or intersection configuration is. But that's something we'll be able to work out, and it won't be a delay. In terms of the traffic imbalance, that's one of the concerns that we have. Is it is heavily weighted on south traffic coming from the south and from the west. Anybody who's driven out there has seen the traffic go back up 30 cars deep at the stop sign on really busy days. It's not every day, but there's days where it'll back up 30 cars deep. That's part of the, the analysis when you're running the traffic counts with the cameras and stuff. And we'll actually set up cameras that they'll track cars that go through, track cars that turn. It's a pretty in-depth traffic analysis to see how the cars are moving. And we'll have some other areas that we're going to be picking up and looking for to see that people aren't shortcutting intersections and those kind of things too. But yeah, that is a concern, is the imbalance, and whether or not that's so significant that it's a problem. There's no guarantees in life. I mean, the trouble whenever you're doing an intersection design is you can get something that works great 99% of the time, and it really makes people frustrated the 1% of the time. And the question is that 1% of the time frustration that you might have, how does that compare to everything else? And that's part of what we would look at, is what are the worst case scenarios, and does it make that unworkable?
Yeah, one thing I've observed about that intersection, because I go through there at all times of day, is that it depends on when you hit that intersection, where the cars are backed up. I've seen them backed up every direction at different times of day. So I don't know if it's just a perspective, but I don't want to get into the business of trying to engineer the project here.
Yeah.
That's your job. We'll let you do that. You come back and tell us what you really find out, what the real facts are, and then we'll go from there. As far as, and I know some of you were not on the council at the time we did the right-of-way acquisition for Woodlawn. We actually hired a company to do that for us that are expert in right-of-way acquisitions. And I think we ended up having to buy 20 or 30 right-of-ways. Is that correct, on Woodlawn? So we'll probably have a similar picture on this as well. There'll be a lot of right-of-ways that we just can't imagine right now that will pop up and say, oh, we have to do that. So there'll be when the engineering design is done, they will identify all those. We will hire somebody to go get those right-of-ways done for us.
When do you anticipate doing the traffic study?
So we're kind of,
I asked that because of the Woodlawn intersection maybe being open in 3 months. Would it be able to be after that?
so one of the discussions that we've had recently with Ty and with Ann is, with the changeover that they're talking about in 2 months, what we may do is we'll proceed with the survey and a lot of our preliminary design, but it may be best to wait until April and do that traffic count once that's opened up, because that will be a better picture. And the positive side of that, and I don't know if I think I've talked to Ty about this. If we do wait, we'll actually, that fee for the traffic counting and our fee for the traffic study will actually drop a little bit, because we won't have to do as much iterative analysis to make some assumptions. So we're kind of trending towards maybe doing some of our preliminary studying, get that part going, and then do that traffic study, do the actual traffic counts in April. We haven't finalized that, but we're thinking about recommending waiting until that phase 2E is done. But we haven't finalized any choice on that. We can go sooner, but it gives you a more accurate count. And if we have to do less work, I mean, again, I'm a citizen here. Chris and I talked about it. We would reduce our fee if we're putting less effort into that part of it.
Mr. Mayor,
Very
one
good.
more.
Mr. David.
I will ask you to speculate, or from your experience, what's the general increase in cost with a roundabout? And
So you'll hear a lot of people say how expensive roundabouts are, and they are expensive. There's more pavement there, there's more area, and it is. I'm guessing that doing the roundabout, and this is just me spitballing, but somewhere around $500,000 more is my guess. Now, that's my guess because intersections, signal equipment is getting very expensive. We used to do traffic signals back in the day, not that long ago, for $125,000 is what we budget. We're budgeting $300,000 to $400,000 for the equipment now. It's just gotten a lot more expensive. So I was surprised when I was talking to Mike Spade, our traffic guy who works on this kind of stuff, that it's gotten that expensive because I knew it had risen. I was guessing 275,000, and he said, no, it's closer to 300 to 400, depending on the amount of equipment available. So that's kind of closed the gap between the two. The balance, of course, the things to remember about when you're talking about cost is if you have a signalized intersection, you've got, at any given time, you've probably got 20 or so light bulbs that are running all day long. In a section head, there's always a light lit up. And so that adds up to where you can be spending $10,000 a year on electricity, maybe even more than that, maybe $20,000 a year in electricity. So over the life of the project, that's $200,000 maybe that you have on the cost. You have to pay somebody to go maintain it. If you have an accident at a signalized intersection, one of the things they do, if there's a severe accident, you have to retrieve the card and keep it for legal records in case somebody sues. The city has an obligation to switch out the card. Now, maybe they get reimbursed for that, but you have fees like that, expenses like that come up in maintenance. And a roundabout, electric outages never have a problem with the roundabout, though, is run. So, I mean, there's things on that you have to balance out. But to answer your question, probably initial cost, probably in the $400,000 to $500,000 range is my just seat of the pants guess.
I remember the bid tab on Woodlawn, the signalized intersection, the signal system itself was $250,000, right in that ballpark. So just for the lights and the structures.
Yeah, and like I said, I was guessing 275, and I was talking, and they said recently it's popped up over 300,000 now. So it's surprisingly expensive and frustratingly expensive.
Yeah. Any other questions before we go to a vote? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say, I'm
Oh,
going to jump in with one more
Sam.
thing, because last time I had said the roundabout was a big thing for me, and then hearing Councilmember David's concerns, I was like, well, what if we do all this and we don't do the roundabout? But refresh my memory. You said with this option B, you're also going to look at a frontage road for the north side and the drainage issues as well. We're getting additional.
So additional items that are included if we do the option B would be there's 3 homes that face onto 45th Street at the west end of the intersection. There used to be a frontage road platted all the way across that area. It's been partially vacated, but as far as accessing those homes, part of your access management policy is always to limit the number of entrances and drives on arterial. So we would look at that as far as evaluating whether or not that frontage road should be reestablished as it was originally platted to minimize the driveways there. 2, there's a pond at the east end of the project that it's on private property, but we will look at whether or not it makes sense to try and negotiate with that property owner to improve the outlet of that pond and do some work there to reduce flooding on tributary 7. That would be another item we would look at. Another item was, of course, further study on the sidewalk, a more in-depth study of the sidewalk throughout the project and going to other areas. Also, at the west end of the project, Ann would like us to provide some alternate options for how we do the storm sewer. And that'll give us more flexibility when we're studying that part of the work is, do we leave part of it open channel, have an alternate option? So when you bid it, if you run into a project where prices are not great and it's $400,000 over, can we go with the alternate option to reduce the cost of the project? So it'll give us a little more flexibility on alternate options as well.
If we end up putting a access road, does that become part of the project cost, or is that something that's accessible to the property owners? Yeah, I know, tough question.
That's a tough question. Most likely that would become part of the project cost if we were to do that. But that's a discussion we could have as far as deciding how to do it. Part of it is We already have one property owner that Ann and I had put together a petition cost estimate because they own three or four of the lots out there, and they were trying to upgrade it so they could market those to people, because the way regulations work, you're limited on the number of houses you can have onto a private drive, so you have to upgrade it to a full roadway. So there may be some opportunities to talk with the folks there and say, hey, the city can cover part of the cost if you cover part of the cost. It may be a cost sharing type agreement too, but that'll all be part of the discussion as far as whether or not it makes sense to do it or not.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye,
Motion
only
carries.
because I don't like roundabouts.
Okay, motion carries 4-1 with Mr. Welch.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Move on to item D. This is our legislative priorities letter for 2023. So each year, the governing body creates a legislative platform identifying key topics we support or oppose. The League of Kansas Municipalities and the Regional Economic Area Partnership, both of which we are members, create more broad platforms that cover many topics. At our workshop last week, we reviewed our 2022 priorities as well as the 2023 REAP and League platforms. And our city attorney drafted a letter outlining the legislative priorities for Bel Aire in 2023 based upon council input from the workshop. And are there any suggested changes in the letter that was made, that was created?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
So at our workshop, we discussed the county fire districts item that's now on our letter. After being at SCAC on Saturday, I walked away from that meeting thinking it might be too early for us to have an opinion on that. The county commission is really early in establishing this advisory board, and it occurred to me that that issue is further away than I had originally anticipated. It might be appropriate to remove that item from our letter for this legislative period and consider it for next time.
I think that's appropriate. I got the same input at the SCAC meeting that it's not ready yet.
Do you have a replacement you'd like to see there?
No, I think it'd be fine to just have the other two.
Okay, just asking.
Any other comments about the letter for legislative? I will be in Topeka on the 25th to visit with our legislators about our priorities.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I just wanted to thank Jackie for revising this and including some language that was, I think, fairly important on the K254 side to kind of matching what KDOT's lingo is on their Ike plan. So I appreciate her help in getting that done. I think it will help our legislators be a little bit more in tune with what KDOT's language is on their development pipeline.
Very good. Thank you for your help with that. If there's no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve a legislative priorities letter for the 2023 State of Kansas legislative session as amended, striking item 2, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This motion carries 5-0. So item E, when we learned about the 53rd Street needing to be closed, I made a suggestion to Mr. Lasher that maybe we should take an opportunity to try to fix some of the bad spots in it, because there's some pretty bad areas in it. And I think that item E came as a result of that, but I'll let Mr. Henry tell us the rest of the story.
Yeah, I think Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. This is Bel Aire's version, never let a good road closure go to waste. Ann has a lot of the details on what they're going to do.
Closures.
If she wants to come up and explain that, and I can kind of tell you where we can fund that from if we choose to move forward. But a lot of this, as the mayor said, is if we have a road closed and we know it's in that type of shape, we might look at getting something repaired while it's closed. I commend Ann for getting with contractors as quickly as possible and getting us in front of us today.
So as multiple people have mentioned tonight, we do have a few potholes on 53rd Street.
Is that what you call them?
Well, you know, they started out that way. The brief history of that road for the council and those listening at home, a council many moons ago wanted a paved road. It was originally a gravel road. So they reached out to the county. The county said, hey, we have this process where we put a cold mix of asphalt down on the road. It was gravel. The county came out, just laid some asphalt on this road and compacted it in, and they walked down the road. The city just paid for the material. The city did not pay for any of the labor. The county said, hey guys, this is only going to last maybe 5 to 10 years, depending on your traffic. Well, we're sitting here 20 plus years down the road. I think we've gotten a pretty darn good deal out of it. So that's where we're at. These cold mix roads are not intended for heavy use. They're intended for very low volume roads, mostly roads that see passenger car traffic, not school buses, not semi trucks, certainly not construction equipment. So that's kind of where we are at today. We've been discussing this road for the past several years. We've got a lot of subdivisions going on. Pretty much the south side is almost completely full of subdivisions, except for the one area at the hard corner of 53rd and Woodlawn. There has been some proposals on that, but nothing has moved forward. So that's where we're at. We do have, the Garver actually did redesign 53rd Street for us. I know that is one of your top priorities, but in the meantime, we've got to fix what we've got. So I talked with our Public Works Department. They neither have the time or the equipment to make proper repairs. They can go through and put some cold patch repairs in that may last a week. It may last a couple months. It may last longer than that. We don't know. But the correct way to go about this to have a more lasting, easily traversable road is to go with the Kansas paving quote. This is 6 inches of concrete and 2 inches of asphalt on top. That is what we have done on the other patches that are holding up very well. The problems that you generally see are the transitions from the patches to the old roadway, and that's where we generally get the problems. And the turning traffic certainly does not help. So that's where we're at. I did reach out to Kansas Paving yesterday and say, hey, can you please put something together for me? I did not have time to reach out to other contractors in the area since it was Martin Luther King Day. Kansas Paving is working on our citywide patch repair project. So this is something that if the council desired, it could be a change order onto that project. It doesn't need to be. It can certainly be a standalone, but if you need a reason why you have one bid, that could be a reason why you have one bid. So that's what I've got for you. They did go out and look at it yesterday morning. There's approximately 6 areas that they identified as being really bad. I said, fix the worst of it. If it's just a little bit of cracks, don't worry about it at this time. I know we're thinking about redoing the entirety. I don't want to waste public funds, especially if we're going to redo it this year, next year. But that's kind of how it evolved and where we're at.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that information. I appreciate that. Mr. Smith.
Will Kansas Paving be able to do those repairs this week? Or
Yes.
I'm just wanting to make sure we don't extend that road closure and Woodlawn delay any longer.
Yes, I have asked them, will you please, if it's necessary to pull your crews off of the citywide patchwork projects, do it. We need to get this done while the road is closed. And the other part is if the weather makes it as such that we cannot get an asphalt there, our other option is we can put cold mix on top of that, which is not related to weather, or we can just bring concrete all the way up to the top. Bringing concrete all the way up to the top, you're going to have a ka-thunk because they settle at different rates, but it's not different than we have now. it's going to be a similar kathunk, just probably less of one. So
We've got some pretty good bumps there now.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me, John, Mr. Welch. Ms. Hamburg was, already had asked to speak. Ms. Hamburg.
Just a quick question. Talking about not wasting money and spending money on Band-Aids, but this is a very small percentage of what that whole rebuild would be. Is it remind me of the number to 2.5?
2.5 million.
Okay, so it's a very small percentage of.
Yes. And the longer we wait on getting that started, we may have another one coming before you.
Thank you.
Mr. Welch.
I would expect there to be more patches because we're not going to get that road done in 2 or 3 years. But my other question, since you answered one, was how many areas we're talking about. What can we do to make those transitions easier? Because our guys went out there and did a lot of work to smooth that out after the last time. And there's still one really big bump there just west of Woodlawn if you're headed east.
Unfortunately, because of the road surface that is existing, there's really not much we can do. We're doing what we can with the 2 inches of asphalt on the top. The asphalt is a softer material that is malleable. And so the thought was to go ahead and put that cap on to ease that transition. It obviously doesn't help, but when the area adjacent to it, the old stuff, when you get down on it, that moves at a different rate than the patches does. So there's not a whole lot we can do.
Is that the problem when you come off of it? It forces
Yes.
it down. It's
Yes.
not that you could feather the edge when they initially put it in.
Not really. And Mr. Dean's got a little bit more experience in construction and might be able to offer some thoughts. But in my experience, there's really nothing else we can do.
No, I have nothing to really add, but other than that, it is one of our top priorities. We talked about it in our workshop to replace the road. I do agree that we probably will see a couple more patches needed, but I disagree with John that it's going to be 3 or 4 years before we replace that road. I think probably be in the next couple of years based on our priority list. So that's all I had to say.
So your comment about the little potholes becoming big potholes reminds me of the story of the little boy and big barn fire. The barn burned down. The fireman went to the little boy and said, little boy, did you start that fire? He said, oh no, sir. The fire I started was just a little bitty one. I will entertain a motion.
I've got another
Oh,
question
okay.
though.
Sorry.
We're hoping we can do this while the road is closed. If they can't do it, can they maybe just do one half at a time so that the road isn't completely closed?
I can work with them on doing that. Yes.
Yeah, I'd almost say don't do it if you can't do it while the road's closed because we're going to have 45th closed
Correct.
and it's going to be 2 months.
We're going to, they have bid a high early concrete, which gets up to strength very quickly. So you can put that in and then put stuff on it, usually the next day or the day after. So it's a very quick process. It's really going to depend on the temperatures and the asphalt.
My suggestion is if they can't get it done while the road is currently closed, they wait until 45th is back open.
Sure.
Okay. That's
Agree with
my
that.
comment.
But I'll make a motion to accept the bid from Kansas Paving at a cost not to exceed $29,950 for repairs to 53rd Street between Woodlawn and Oliver and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Welch and a second by Ms. Hamburg. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This motion carries 5-0. So I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess, and then we have a couple of executive sessions to do after that.
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we held a 5-minute recess. I'm going to call the meeting back into order. And the next item on the agenda is an executive session. I'm going to ask for a 45-minute executive session. And there is a motion in the meeting packets. If somebody would please make that motion.
I guess I can read as good as anybody. Motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussion the subject of attorney-client consultation regarding contractual obligations pursuant to KSA 75-4319, exception for attorney-client privilege. Invite the Assistant City Manager, the City Attorney, Ken Lee, Brian Meyer, Sarah Lohman, Dave Nauman, and Jennifer Hill. The meeting will be for a period of 45 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in City Council chambers at, I can't do that,
9:30.
man. 9:30.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Welch and second by Mr. Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are in executive session. Those Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session and no binding action was taken. I'll entertain a motion for extension of the executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to extend the executive session for 30 minutes with the open meeting resuming in council chambers at 10:05 PM.
Second.
motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Back in executive session for 30 more. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We held executive session with no binding actions taken, and I'll entertain a motion to extend the executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
make a motion to extend the executive session for an additional 10 minutes with the open meeting resuming at 10:17 PM.
Second.
a motion by Mr. Smith, a second by Ms. Hamburg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We're in executive session for another 10 minutes. Call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session. No binding action was taken. We need to move on to item B, and I would punt this, except this is an item that is kind of important and needs to be addressed. So I asked for a second executive session, and the verbiage is in your packet. 15 minutes. Thank you guys for all your help. We appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of matters of non-elected personnel, contracted employees pursuant to the KSA 754319 exception for the same. Invite Jacqueline Kelly into this session. This meeting will be for a period of 15 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in council chambers at 10:40 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If there is discussion,
I'm wondering whether we're going to invite the city manager.
no, we do not.
Okay, I want to make sure. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Record is noted.
I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Hey, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session, no binding actions were taken, and we are back for item 13, discussions and future issues. Anyone have an item to discuss or future issue to mention? I think everybody wants to go home, so we can move on to item 14, adjournment. A motion from Mr. Welch, and who seconded that?
Mr. David.
Mr. David? And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.